So what does a typical man see when he walks into your church? Well, he sees a whole lot of things going on. Look at this page in your workbook that has all these different things that might be going on in the typical church. You know, he walks in and he sees the preaching and the teaching going on in church services and Sunday school classes. He sees conversations going on and hears lessons about being a godly father and acts of social justice, and there's small groups going on. There's all these different things going on, and it's really difficult for a guy to figure out sort of what the most important thing is, or how can he make his way through. Well, here's what we would say, that the point of our churches needs to be discipleship. Let me show you why. Let's look at these middle 9 items on this worksheet. You might even want to draw a square around them and circle each one of these items. If you think about it, these are really the outcomes that we're looking for among our men. We want men who worship God. We want men who share their faith. We want men who care about the poor and the oppressed and who are good stewards of their time, talents, and treasure. But you know, like Jesus said in the Great Commission, he said go and make disciples. He didn't say go and make worshipers or tithers or great dads or evangelists. Now, does Jesus want those things? Well, of course he does. But what Jesus knew was that if we built disciples, then we would get worshipers, we would get great dads, we would get stewards and workers of social justice and those kinds of things. So what I want you to do on your worksheet is go ahead and draw an arrow out from discipleship to all of these other things. And this is what we mean when we say that discipleship is the portal priority. When we build disciples, we get these other things. Well, what about these items around the outside of the chart? Well, draw circles around those, and these items are the things that are your methods for actually building disciples. So of course we're gonna have preaching, we're gonna have teaching, we're gonna have Bible studies, and guys are gonna study the Bible on their own in private study. We're gonna have mentoring and seminars and small groups, all these different activities that are going on. But we need to be careful that these activities focus on building disciples. So draw an arrow now from the outer items, these methods, into discipleship. Now let me give you another way of looking at this. Let's take all of the methods and let's put those on the left-hand side of our page, and then let's take all of the outcomes and we're going to put those on the right side of the page. So now you have this chart with 2 columns on it. Now let's take one of these outcomes. Let's take stewardship for an example. If we preach sermons and teach lessons in Sunday school classes and have books and seminars and small groups, and if we focus on the monetary needs of the church and we focus on the importance of giving money to the church, what we actually do is we're focusing on people's performance. We're not focusing on the heart issues that we want people to pay attention to. And so what we do is we don't really create people, we're not really talking about stewardship, we're just talking about giving money. And so we're not really creating stewards, we're creating donors. We're not creating disciples, we're creating donors. So what's the problem with that? Well, let me tell you. If you have a donor, every time you need something, you have to convince them all over again. But when you have a disciple, that's a person who has a relationship with God and a relationship with his neighbor. So here's what that looks like. So instead of focusing on performance, focusing on the act of giving money, we're going to focus on building disciples. We're going to focus on helping people build their relationship with God, loving God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving their neighbor as themselves. Now, when they have these key relationships in place, their relationship with God and their relationship with their neighbor, then when they're presented with a need, or where they understand what the needs of the church are, what the needs for missions are, the needs for their community, they don't respond out of a sense of obligation. Instead, they're responding out of the overflow of their hearts. And this is what it means to build a disciple. And this is what it looks like when you're doing all those activities with a focus on men's hearts, a focus on building their relationship with God and their neighbors, a focus on building disciples. So this is why we say that discipleship is the portal priority for all the ministry in your church. It needs to be focused on building disciples.